It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Professor Itta Shedletzky. We're here in your beautiful home in Givatayim. And Itta, you have something very, very remarkable and so important to share with us.
Yes, I think I would call it Eva Zador, a story of a friendship with between the years 1958 to 1995. And Eva Zador came to Switzerland from Hungary in 1956, when the revolution took with her parents and with her younger sister. And I met her in 58 as a girl in my class in high school, in gymnasium in Zurich. We were a girl, it wasn't a Jewish school, it was a general school. And also, maybe I want to say something, because the story I'm going to tell about Eva and her life. She was born in 42 in Budapest, and I can say for me it was like a detective story, but as we know the end of it, she came from a Jewish background, but she didn't know it until a certain stage in her life. And I stayed in touch with her during these years with the help of other friends of my school. So part of my school class in high school is involved in this story. That's why it's important to talk about the atmosphere in the school. And also I think it's a matter of minorities and majorities in a school class. And there were different minorities in this class. We were a very small class. We were 14 girls, because this was not the mainstream curriculum of gymnasium, because the mainstream you went after 6th grade or after 5th grade, I even don't remember. This is the Gymnasium A, it was called. And I was in Gymnasium B, which is you finish the first 9 years in it's 6 primary school, it's called in Switzerland, and then secondary school. And I finished secondary school 3 years. You can make only 8 years if you want, and then you can learn a profession or do whatever you like. You have to learn 8 years. And I did these 9 years, and I decided during the last 2 years that I want to go to high school, and then this was 4 years additional, so 13 years. Whereas I think when you go into Gymnasium A, when you went then, I don't know how it is today, it was only 6 or 6.5 years, so that's the difference. So I was in this more concentrated gymnasium of 4 years, and that's why also the classes were smaller. And so we were 14, and the tradition of living in Israel, if schools are divided into boys and girls, usually it is for religious reasons. But in Switzerland it was just a tradition, and there was, of course, I think they thought maybe psychologically it's easier to teach only girls and only boys at that age of adolescence. And they used to have parties with the boys twice or 3 times a year. There were official parties between the girls and the boys of the boys' gymnasium, who was not far away from the place, from our school. And okay, so it was just a tradition of teaching girls and boys not together, and it might be that it has certain advantages, I don't know, because before we went together and afterwards it's That's just to make things clear for Israeli people who are hearing this story. So what I wanted, what are minorities and majorities in a school class? First of all, Zurich is a Protestant town, and most of the girls in my class were Protestant. And there were, I think, 3 Catholics, and of course then there is where do you come from in the cantons of Switzerland. There were 2 girls who were from the Italian part from Switzerland. I think both of them were also Catholic. One of them was really in a group of friends with me, and the other Catholic girl, Sylvia, I'll talk about her a lot because Sylvia is important in this story. And then of course there are nationalities not connected with the different languages and language cultures in Switzerland, like German, French, Italian, and there is this small group of Rätoromansch in the most beautiful place in Switzerland where all the resorts are, in Grison. There is St. Moritz and Arosa and Klosters and Davos. So there is, in this canton, there is another 4th language of Switzerland. So, but there are other nations. There are people from abroad, from other countries. So we had one girl who came from Germany. Her father came from Göttingen. He was a professor of genetics, and she was his daughter. She had a brother too, so that was Gabi, and she's also very important in our story. And there is the one girl, Corinna, and from the Italian part of Switzerland and Catholic. And there is Sylvia, who, I don't know when she came. Her father was from another canton, also from the Wallis, which is, it's called Valais in French. It's half German, half, they have a very special dialect, which even the other German dialects almost don't understand. But in the Valais, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Matterhorn is there. There is one of the high mountains. They have high mountains and Alps, and there is almost no city, but only so. Her family came from there, and also I think this was mainly Catholic, and she was a Catholic. And I think to secondary school she went already in Zurich, but I think she went to, if I'm not mistaken, she went to a private secondary school, probably Catholic. So, and I, of course, I was a Jew. that's.
Were there any other Jewish kids in your class? Any other?
I was the only one.
You were the only one? I
was the only one. Later on, it turned out that Eva, who came from Hungary, was also a Jew. So, you see, but in all what we knew then, was that I was the only Jew. And I usually was, especially only when I was in 1st and to 3rd class of primary school, I was with another Jewish boy, also religious, who was together with me in Talmud Torah in our community. But that's besides that, I always was the only one. So when now there also is a question of where you live, in which quarter. It's also part of the social geography or social topography of a school class. So some of the girls came from the places, little towns or partly villages at the board of how do you say Hof. The lake has a beach,
It's the beach, yeah, Kopayam.
It's along the lake. Along the lake, they usually were quite nice places, quite expensive, rich, more or less rich. Not all of them, but
like the beachfront.
Yes, not always on the front, but it was beautiful. It was outside. It was a lot of nature, but they were towns, you know. Like there was famous Kilchberg, where Thomas Mann lived, and where the chocolate Lindt factory is. So, but there are different other places. There is Küsnacht, which is well known because of Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, who lived in Küsnacht, and there was Zollikon. There were all these places. So Zumikon, they came from these places. I think most of them, and maybe 3 or 4 girls lived it's called Zürichberg, the mountain of Zurich. Zurich has a topography like my place, Givertime. It has 2 hills on both sides, and in the middle there is a river and a lake. So when I came to Givertime, I thought it's topography of Zurich. I'm coming back home to a topography known to me, 2 hills, and in the middle there is Weizmann Street, but it's okay. But that's just in brackets. So, and I lived in a quarter which is called Aussersiel, on the other side of the river Siel, which is where a lot of Jews lived and a lot of and Italians. At that time, the foreigners were mostly Italians, but there were also others. And there is the other side of the Siel where the better quarters are, you know, the more fashionable, the richer ones. And also on the Zürichberg, on the hill, at the right, but both beaches, both alongside the river in Zurich, are better quarters. Also on both there is no, but with the hills it's and the streets, and this side of the river or the other side of the river is of this. There are 2 rivers. The main river of Zurich is the Limmat, which is going directly into or coming out of the Lake of Zurich, and it meets the Siel, the smaller one, and this Siel is really the outside, on the other side of the Siel, and I came from this Aussersiel, and Eva also lived in Aussersiel, maybe 10 minutes from my place. And so, and the class was very much, but it was very much integrated. But there were special groups of friends, and we were, I think, I figured it out, maybe it's like a myth, but there was something to it that we were minorities, you know. And I remember, and I was a very close friend of Sylvia, especially Sylvia Kruse, whose father was a dentist, and she lived also on the uphill beneath the Zürichberg, but in the, you know, more fashionable quarters. And we lived there. It was like a petit bourgeoisie. It was okay. It wasn't poor or something, but it was much more, you know, and smaller apartments and all that. And it was not, and also it was, for me, it was not, there were very few girls in Bnei Akiva. In my age, I was the only one who went to high school. And there was one girl a little bit older than I was, and one who was with me in Talmud Torah, but she was younger, so she came into high school a year after me or something, but we were not on the same age. So this was also special. It's not like in other places where, because usually one went into somehow how do you call it? Commerce, you know, some kind of commerce. You learn commerce, you learn this, you learn some other kind of profession. But I really also was in Bnei Akiva, at my age group, I was the only one who went to high school. And I think in Aguda there was no one. in Agudat Israel, no one. I heard from people in Vienna or other places that religious people also went to high school, and I think it's in America it's the same. It's not, it's different. But that's also, so I was like something very but I remember with Sylvia we had a very good, from the first moment we were very good friends. We had a sense of humor, a same one, and we liked to go to the theater. We were very good friends, and we were the more active ones in class somehow, both of us. And then I don't remember if when I started the friendship with Eva, we got to know, and it was a very good atmosphere in the class all the time.
If I can just ask you, did you ever experience any anti-Semitism from your classmates or the teachers?
Not in high school, and not in school, never in school from the first class I came, but I did in my neighborhood.
But not in school.
Not in school. I did, but this also
was.
And
the girls knew that you were Jewish, and the teachers knew.
Yes, and it was very and I must say this was part of my Zionist, which I understood afterwards with my Zionist education. My family I was third generation Mizrahi, Bnei Akiva. My father's father, who came really at about 1912 from Warsaw to Switzerland, to Lucerne, and then to Zurich. He was first minute a member of the Mizrahi in Zurich, which was founded in 1903. Or I think they even had a branch in Lucerne where he lived, and he was in the committee. And then my father also was in Brit HaNoar Hadati, where the youth, it wasn't called Bnei Akiva then, it was called religious youth group, it was called. And then for the older ones, I think after 18, they called themselves the group of religious chalutzim, religious pioneers. So that was, and then later on it was called Bnei Akiva, I think worldwide. Okay, so I think only in the late 30s or something like that. I think Bnei Akiva was founded with this name. So I understood afterwards, after I studied Jewish history, German Jewish history, and that this identity of being beyond a religious affiliation, which you have, like you are a Jew or a Protestant or a Catholic or a Muslim or whatever, to be something which is like another, a beyond or aside religion, a group, like a nation, yes, it gives you some kind of security, the way it is organized. And I think that's the reason why also in the early 20th century youth movements were founded in, I think the Germans and maybe the English with the Scouts were the first ones to, but I think the Germans were really the pioneers of youth movement, like to have a youth culture, and it was kind of modernization of it, that the children are not only more taken care of and go to school and get like since the 18th century, but even there is like something like youth culture. So this was part, and also the Jewish youth movements grew on this background in Europe, and especially in Germany. As far as I know, Germany was really pioneering in this. It wasn't political so much, but then it became political everywhere. But this is other question. But it gave me some kind of self-esteem, of security. That I belong. I'm like I'm an equal person to all the others, and not because it's not the Jewish, it's the Zionist consciousness of also having, you know, the idea that there must be a special place for Jews, a special state, as the whole history of in Eretz Israel or Palestine. That's I think that gave me a kind of I was proud of being Jew. I wasn't afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe to I come back to this later. But it was, for me, it was interesting because I think also because I had in Talmud Torah one of the teachers. I had two teachers in this Eastern European community. People who came from Eastern Europe had their own community where I was belonging to. My grandfather was one of the founders of it. And my luck was that I had two teachers who came from Germany after the Shoah. The one was Shlomo Speyer, who was my first teacher, and then Judah Ari Wohlgemuth, who came from Berlin, and his father had been the head of the Orthodox Rabbinical Seminary in Berlin, and they were very good teachers, and also, especially with Speyer, he used to talk about Jews and the other religions. He was because he taught, although he wasn't even, I think he didn't have a doctorate, but he was known as a private scholar, and he taught Old Testament at the University for Protestants at the University of Zurich. And he was very much involved, and he told us there was, for example, in Zurich, there was an actor called Ernst Ginsberg, who was a Jew, a very famous, very good actor. A lot of Jewish actors came to Switzerland, to Zurich especially. I saw him as Mephisto in Faust. He was wonderful. And he became a Catholic in Zurich. And Speyer told us about it, and he said, he blamed the Jewish community. There was no place for a person like him, and he wanted to, and he became probably in Zurich became a believing Catholic. He didn't become a Protestant, which was the official religion. And there are a lot of there are always conflicts between, not only in Ireland but everywhere. I think there are conflicts. Smaller ones, minor ones, and major ones, but there was Zurich. There always were minorities of professors at the university in Zurich, also in my school, which after I reflected, or when we were older in high school, we understood that there were very few Catholic teachers. Most of the teachers were Protestant, and we had one Jewish teacher who was my history teacher, who was a social democrat, a Jew, a wonderful teacher. So also he came, I think at the age of 2, from Ukraine, and he became member of the parliament in Switzerland from Social Democrats. So these things were in the air, the religion, the politics, and all this. And I remember that I used to have discussions with Sylvia. I wanted to understand to which of the two religions which also relate to the Tanakh, to the Old Testament as they call it, to which one is in Judaism more close. I think I have never solved the question, although it's known that the Protestants, the Old Testament is much more central for the Protestants, especially I think in the English-speaking world even more, but also it's more, the Catholics see it as some kind of early part of the real Testament, which is the New Testament, and all these stories, and it always interested me. So here comes this, and I don't remember but very early we became friends. We found out that we live in the same place, Eva and I. And I actually wanted, and the school was quite a long way to go. So during the week, I started to go by tramway, by the electric train, a few stations, but then Eva and Shabbat, I had to go to school. I walked to school. But Eva was, she said she wants to walk, and I started walking with her. So that I was sometimes when it was rainy or when I was too late or something, I didn't like the idea in the beginning, but afterwards we enjoyed it very much. These these going together to school. And on these, but not so much in the breaks in school, but on these walks to school and from school, we got to know each other. She lived closer. We had to go by her place, so we met downstairs at her place. She lived on the second floor, also I think like us, in a 3-room apartment. We also lived on the second floor in a 3-room apartment, and so we got to know each other. And she talked about her parents, and she talked about people in Israel, and I had a feeling from the first moment, this girl is Jewish. You smell it, I don't know what, but from gestures you don't understand it.
Did she look Jewish at all?
I don't know if you can call it. Maybe I'll show you pictures of her. This is
okay, no, that's fine. No, it's
okay.
fine. I'm just going to zoom in. It's fine. So this is
Eva Zador. In the summer and in the winter, at different ages with different, but it's during those 4 years, she had different haircuts. But this here on this picture, she gave this to me with dedication. And she wrote on the back of this picture a citation from a French author called Nicolas Chamfort. I don't know him, and it's in German.
You can read it in German? And
yes, I read it and then I'll translate it. Der verlorenste aller Tage ist der, an dem man nicht gelacht hat. The most lost day of all is the one on which one hasn't laughed.
Wow.
And then she writes in Schweizerdeutsch, der heutig ist dann nicht verloren. The day today is not lost at all. And there is an exclamation mark, which means we have laughed a lot, which really was. Yours, Eva. And she writes, Thursday, 1st of September, 1960, at 18 and 12 minutes.
Wow.
That's Eva. She really had a wonderful sense. We used to laugh a lot.
And she came originally from Hungary?
So she came from Hungary.
And
and she was officially Protestant. So then she started to say, she also told, she had jokes. I said, this is a Jewish joke. So she said, my mother has friends in Israel, and she is in Cotton, which she knew in Hungary, and all kinds of stories. And she really, and I'll tell you how she came to know and how it developed her whole life story around this Jewish identity of hers. So I said, okay, everything. I saw her parents too, and it looked like they looked. I mean, if you think she looks Jewish, I don't know, but she's dark, and she might look Hungarian. I don't know. I remember. I must tell you a story which made me also. I was perplexed when I was in 4th grade. I had a friend who lived not far from me, and we went together to school. Ursula was her name, very nice girl. And she also knew, and on one of our schoolways she said to me, you don't look Jewish at all. And I don't remember what I said, but I remember what I thought. I thought, what does that mean? What is a Jew supposed to look like? I didn't know anything about the stigmas of the nose and the ears and all these, all these anti-Semitic stereotypes or whatever. I had no idea. I knew there was anti-Semitism, but not because it was just, I was wondering, I found it strange that she said it. So I was already alert, that's why I always don't want to say, I don't want to do what the Nazis did, And then my first visit in Berlin, we were there on a conference. I was there with Moshe, in '87. This was not the first, this was the second visit. But then, because it was Yom Kippur, I went on the street with Moshe and I was looking for Jews, and suddenly I said, it's horrible. I'm walking through Berlin looking for Jews. I feel like the Gestapo, you know. It's strange inversions, I would say, of notions. Well, I'm looking for Jews. They have been looking for Jews to kill them, you know. But I was looking for different reasons. Although I had a problem with Jews in Germany, because at my home, Jews, or as I was educated also in the Zionist movement, the German Jewish community finished in 33 or existence, and surely in 38 and 9, and after the camps and all this, there can't be any Jewish. It's strange. So I had to work a lot on that too, you know, all these ideas, where can Jews live and why not live in Germany, and why and for what reason. So it was a problem for me my whole life, and part of my, I think, doing my doctorate the way I did on different Jewish newspapers, trying to understand how Jews define themselves in modern times, religiously, nationally, and all this. It was a very vital question for me, and surely also because of Eva, as you will see. So with Eva, so I said, okay, and I talked with my parents about it, but we didn't. Okay, she's Protestant, she's all this, and to make and she was very much integrated in class, and I never asked her what they celebrate. We didn't talk about what is going on in the family. Her father was an engineer, an electric engineer, in a firm. And her mother was working in a bookstore, one of the big bookstore of Orel Füssli. They had different. I think then there was only one in town, and there was also a printing house not far from where I lived, but in the center of town, at the main street, there was a big store, and her mother worked there. And I just now found out through I was investigating a little bit to know more, because I didn't even know the first names of Eva's parents. I only know it's Mr. Zador and Mrs. Zador, and and sometimes on the way home, Eva and I would pass by her mother's store and say hello. And then afterwards, now I heard last week when I was preparing this, that she actually was a chemist. And at the beginning, when her mother came, she had a friend, Hannah, who worked at this bookstore, who also came from Hungary, and she helped her get a job there. But later on, she had the courage, her mother, to ask, and she got a job in her field in chemistry somewhere. So this I didn't know. This is new knowledge, but I knew there is a daughter of Eva living here in Israel, and I also tried to catch up, not to tell about things, but to have order in my head, what was when, because what I remember is, you know, only bits and pieces, and a young girl in high school, and so So Eva was very much, and she was very good. She had to learn all these languages, you know. She knew Hungarian. She had already been 2 years in Switzerland, and she was very gifted for languages. She knew German perfect. She spoke Schweizerdeutsch. She was a very good student in French, in English, in Latin. She was really, and I always had she is working very hard. And we never did homework together, so it was a different social life, you know. I had my friends, personal friends in school, also my non-Jewish friends, but I had my friends in Bnei Akiva, and so we had different, and I never asked and never knew what, but it was like, I was at her home, I saw her parents, I came up, we didn't play there or something, we're also already not in the age of playing together or doing it, we were older. She came to my place, one knew each other, but it wasn't really that I remember how her apartment looked like or so, but we were, and she was very much integrated in class, all this.
Did she ever ask you anything about Judaism?
No, nothing. No, she knew what I was taught. So here I want to tell something. We had a very good German teacher who was actually in Switzerland. There are very good high school teachers who have doctorates. It's not the same as, you can also be a high school teacher, or in Zurich, every canton has a different education law, so I don't know in other, but in Zurich, you don't have to be a doctor, but you have to have from the university a degree in teaching high school, but you have to have an MA and and a certificate and all this. But we had, but if you taught at high school, even if you were no doctor, after 12 years you were called professor. So it was something very dignified. And some of our teachers were doctors also. And there was this one, Dr. Max Lüthi, who was, and part of them, also my English teacher and this teacher, they were teaching didactics at the university of German literature teaching, and the English teacher, English teaching. She even wrote a book, a study book for high schools, Let's Learn English, a wonderful book, and she was a wonderful teacher. We really had good teachers, I must say, and I hear so many stories about unlucky children in high school. I was very lucky in school at all, so maybe I don't know if it's my person who gets along or is I don't know what, but it's a fact. If I talk to a lot of my friends or my husband or everybody, they weren't really, they like to learn, some of them, but it was not so easy. So and with Eva then already we also had, and this teacher, he was famous for his research on fairy tales. He's until today his books are Max Lüthi. He also wrote a book on the dramas of Shakespeare, and we studied Shakespeare Macbeth in German because the translation of the Romantic period is classical German. It belongs almost to German literature. That's something about. But he was really, but he also had very progressive methods of studying, and one of them was, maybe it was usual, we didn't not only have to write compositions or small essays, but we also have to be we had to give a lecture, and we could choose the topic of the lecture. And I chose to talk about the Jewish holidays and the Hebrew calendar, so that my friends should know why I don't come to school at that time and at that day, and the Catholics didn't come, and so and so. And Eva gave a lecture on the national poet of Hungary, Sándor Petőfi, who was also in the revolution of 1848, and so I knew about Petőfi from Eva. And I had another friend, and I want to show this picture. This is when we had a week studying in the mountains with school. Eva is on the right here. This is Eva, and in the middle is Elisabeth, and near her is Dorothee. And I just come back to the name. So Eva was talking about Petőfi. Elisabeth, who is on this side, and I mixed it up, and this is Dorothee. Dorothee was sitting near me, and Elisabeth was the one who gave a lecture on Paul Klee, on the painter Paul Klee, one of the famous painters of the Blue Rider, of the Blue, this group around Kandinsky and all the important expressionist, pre-expressionist. It's not important. And he's one of my favorites. And the first time I heard, so I learned, these are the lectures I remember. The lecture of Eva, because of Petőfi, and she was very proud talking about, so you could see the the confidence she had in her being integrated there. She was, and everybody was interested. It was an open atmosphere.
And Itta, how was your lecture? How your talk? How was that received?
Very good. And I didn't have much to prepare. I said I get, like you say, 2 flies in one blow.
Yeah.
You know, it was all ready. I just had to talk about Pesach and about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I explained about the holidays, what they mean, and how they are constructed, and all I knew. And I knew a lot, not only from Talmud Torah, but also from Bnei Akiva and from home. So it was like, you know, and it was very well received. And wasn't only well received, also the tolerance in school was that I didn't write on Shabbat, but I had to come to school. And the teachers really made an effort not to make exams or not to, that you didn't have to write. How do you call it? Exams, yeah. Exams on Shabbat. And once my math teacher forgot, and he saw that I'm not, and he suddenly remembered. He came to me and he said, "You can write this exam on Monday." I'm sorry, I forgot. So, no, it was very.
It's wonderful.
Really, it was a very, very good atmosphere. And I must say, it was when the Social Democrats were the mayor of Zurich, and they were more tolerant. It's like that. I mean, today it changes. It depends, you know. But they were very. It was very, very open city, I think, on the whole. And this, the school was belonging to the city of Zurich. And the boys' school was belonging to the Canton Zurich, and the boys couldn't go. The religious boys couldn't get. They had to write on Shabbat or not come at all. So some of them went to Lucerne, and my brother also. My father wanted him to go, and he went to the rector, and the rector said, "You have to take a dispense from the rabbi that your son can write on Shabbat." So my father said, "I'm sorry, but it doesn't work like that with us." So this was, so he went later on to a private school, but that's another story. So, and sometimes also we had a very good atmosphere sometimes, because it was far, we had school was not from 8 to 2 or something like that. We learned in the morning and then also in the afternoon. And there was a break that's holy in Switzerland. You eat lunch at home. It's like today, I heard for women it's very difficult. It's from the 1st grade until high school. I don't know if today they changed it finally, but everybody goes home at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the latest, and one comes back to school at 2 or 3 for 1 hour, for 2 hours. There was only one day on Wednesday in Zurich, there was free of school, and of course Saturday afternoon too. But besides that, we had this break, so several times we used to stay in school and we used to make homework, or we used to go to the lake. We used to buy some fruit or some salad or something and sit on a bench. And so a lot of times Sylvia used to stay and I used to. So we were maybe there were other groups, I don't remember, who organized themselves. So we had a social life also over not going home, because for me it was far from most of them. It was far, even if they came from, had to come with the train from these little towns near the lake. So it was really, we had, and there was also a club of movies for high school pupils. One could get a card for nothing. And I think once a month or so, there was a movie theater. We went to see a movie from 12 to this was faculty, but some of my friends were, so we had very lively social life, and it didn't matter if I was Jewish or not. And we also could go to the theater for very not much money. And Eva used to go also to the movies, I remember. To the theater I don't remember, but I went a lot with my friend Sylvia too. So now I'm going on. So at I think in the year before we finished high school, Eva already had a friend, a boyfriend, and he was already a student at the, I don't know if at the Polytechnicum or at the university. I think it was Polytechnicum, because I know him, and he used to come and see her, and it was like sometimes we I don't know if they always made a date or if he just waited there, I don't know it, but sometimes we planned to go together, to go home together, and then he was there, and she introduced him. I remember him in a long raincoat, standing there very slim with glasses, and he was older, he was already a student. Okay, very nice. We all, his name, he had a very sweet, Helmut was his name. And yes, and you know, we all had boyfriends and all kinds also in Nertiva, you know, that was, but she had really a steady friend from then on. And we finished high school in March '62, and then 2 months later in May I left for Israel. I left for Jerusalem, and then I didn't have any contact anymore with Eva. Somehow maybe we wrote in the beginning, I don't know. With Sylvia I had contact, especially, and there was another girl, Marianne Sutter, she was also from a Protestant family. She also lived upstairs. She was part of our group. But I think not so much Eva, and she didn't, so she was a very quiet girl, and she became an English teacher afterwards in my high school. And I used to visit her when we came from Israel, because her family, she used to make travels to Germany to the World Bildungsreisen, you call it, travels of education, you know, culture, like museums and operas. Her brother was a very gifted pianist, and her parents were fans of opera. So they went to Bayreuth, and they went to Salzburg, and but she was a very modest girl, she looked like a school teacher and I liked her very much. She had a fine sense of humor, and I was a lot of times at her house, and her parents were very open, you know, like educated, open-minded Zurich people. He was teaching in a technicum in Winterthur, and they were very open. They were very interested in Israel and all that. So with Mariam I also corresponded, and with Sylvia and so on. And then and here I want to tell something. The friend who is also very important in this context is Gabi Schmidt, Gabi Ulrich she was called, the daughter of the professor of genetics.
So I'm going to just zoom in. Okay.
This is at a farewell party for Gabi, because she was in school, I think, only for the first 2 years, and then she went to study her father remained in Switzerland, but she went to a school near the border in Germany. She didn't like school, and I'll come to that. She didn't feel well, and she especially had a conflict with the German teacher. She refused to learn Schweizerdeutsch, Gabi, you know. And this was the farewell party, and you see there are little sandwiches on the table. I'll show you now. I'm showing you this am I.
So I'm just going to zoom in. Okay, wow.
And Eva is sitting here, the first one on this side with the white sweater.
You can see you had a very close-knit
so the
class.
Sandwiches, why do I show you the picture? The sandwiches was my kosher contribution to this party, so I could eat something beside fruit or nuts or chocolate or so. So I made the sandwiches, and we also had at school, we had there was a habit that every girl who has her birthday brings a cake to school. Though they used to ask me, how can we make the cake so that you can eat it? What can we put in and what not, and how can we make it? And they used to do it, you know.
It's amazing.
It was really tolerance in the best, openness in the best way you can imagine. So then I came to Israel, and I went back in '66, I think. Then and I didn't know what happened to Eva. I think when I came first time, I went in '66, I came to Switzerland, because before that my parents used to come to Israel. My brother got married, then he had a son, and then my parents came and they had an apartment in Jerusalem. So it took 4 years until I went back to Switzerland, to Zurich. And it may be that Eva was there still, but I was in contact with Sylvia. I met some of my friends. It was very nice. And I used to come, and that's it. Then I didn't come to Switzerland until my father died in '69. And my mother, it was a shock, it was horrible. My mother, the funeral was in Jerusalem, and my mother came to Jerusalem, and we sat the Shiva in Jerusalem. And it was just, I was already teaching at the university course for foreign students in English on Jewish history at the Rothberg School, which is called Rothberg School at the Hebrew University. And so I was vacation of a month, and after the Shiva I went with my mother to Switzerland. That was the first time after '66, and then I came back, and my mother, it took her, I helped her as much as I could in this time, because my brother also had family with small children, and there was family, my father's brother, and they helped her, but she made most of the things alone. And half a year later, in the autumn of '69 or something like that, she came to Jerusalem, into the apartment which my parents had. And then I got to know my husband Moshe in about '70. In '72 we got married. Then I had a child in '73, my older daughter, and I had my studies, and I was working already as an assistant at the university, and then I had a second child who died shortly after in '77. Then I had my daughter Racheli. So it was a difficult time. My mother got sick and she became dementia. It was a very difficult time. And then in '78 my daughter Racheli was born, and when she was half a year old, I don't know if it was a phone call or if it was a letter from Sylvia. I got a letter or a phone that my friend Gabi, who had gone to Canada, had married before that a professor of German literature, Josef Schmidt, and they went to Montreal. And he came as a guest professor to the Hebrew University, to the German department, just when it was opened. I didn't have contact then. I got my contact to the German department through this Josef Schmidt. And he was he came from the same neighborhood. He was a Catholic on my side of the town, where his father was in a Zador, like, what do you call it? Workers' union of Catholic workers, and they lived in some social project of little houses beneath the hill on the side where I lived, on the same side. And Gabi came from the other side of town, from a Protestant German family. and it was really like two worlds
a mixed
coming
marriage.
together.
A mixed marriage.
Like almost like a mixed marriage. But Joseph, had a very good friend whom I knew from my youth, Henri Pauker, and they used to play not far from where he lived was the big Jewish cemetery of the big community in Zurich, the Kultusgemeinde, the Friesenberg. So he said, I used to play with Henri Pauker on the Jewish cemetery. That's my first contact with Jews. And he came here and he worked on Jewish writers. He went to the library and he got to know all kinds of Yekes, and I got to know people through him, like Kitty Steinschneider, whose husband was a grandson of Moritz Steinschneider, the great scholar of science of Judaism, who made a huge bibliography. And this is part of, so he really opened. And at that time I had a crisis in the German department, in the history department. As a woman, I didn't have a chance to get the job booked. I already had taught a targil, an exercise, and tutorials, but I couldn't get. And I was told by Professor Ettinger, who pushed me, who encouraged me to make an MA, and then I concentrated on German Jewish history and all that. And when Joseph, then it was, I got it was clear I don't have a future there. So Joseph, he's full of temperament, this man, and they had a little daughter who is 1 year younger than my older daughter Chaya, and Racheli was a baby. And they used to, and we got very good friends from the first moment with Joseph. It was like, and Gabi anyway. And from Israel, they went to Switzerland. His father wasn't alive anymore. His mother was still alive. She was a real mama. We always discussed the Jewish mother and the Catholic.
Yeah.
My Catholic mother is like a Jewish mother. Don't talk about Jewish mothers. It's the same. And I saw it. She was really. They were not 10 children, but almost. And in Switzerland, it's really strange. So they were a minority, or not really the recognized ones in Switzerland. And if you live on that side of of town, you're not really it's all democratic, it's all okay, but there is a subtext and there is a official text and all this. So Joseph pushed. He said, "You have to." He really pushed me to try to go to the German department. He said, "It's opening up. You have chances. You've studied English literature." So I did it on his. He really pushed me. And he had connections when I just started to plan my doctorate in the late 70s and so on. That's him. But then they went to Switzerland from there, and he said, "You know what? You have to come to Switzerland, and I'll talk to Sylvia." Sylvia was in very good contact with Gabi, and she knew that I knew from her that they had gone to Canada, but I hadn't any contact. And they made the contact when they came to Jerusalem. So he said, "You have," and Sylvia was, and they organized a class meeting of
reunion.
Our class,
a reunion
of our class from high school in June '79, and my daughter Racheli was just a year and a few months, and I was very exhausted from all the stories, with my mother and my baby. It was hard. It was a hard time, and my parents-in-law, my mother-in-law, they agreed that we travel. It was Moshe's first trip to Europe, So we took a Eurail card for a month. And it was only first class at that time. We traveled to Athens. We went to Athens with a plane, and then we could go by train through the Peloponnese to Patras, and then we took a ferry to Brindisi. And we went to through Italy. There was an Israeli, it was really, and Sylvia waited for us at the railway station in Zurich. And because we were her guests, we lived at her house. She invited us, and also they lived on the Zurich in a beautiful, they still live there, beautiful, nice house with a big garden. And her husband also, she studied German literature, and her husband was he was not really a professor, but he taught at he wasn't, but he's a very known scholar of German literature, a German, he's from Germany, Klaus Weimar is his name, like the city of Goethe, Klaus Weimar, so her name, she also, I knew that she had married, she sent me an invitation and pictures, and we had been in contact all the time, and so she made this conference. I must say I wasn't anymore real kosher and all that, and I through the marriage with Moshe and myself, after my father died, I made all kinds of changes in my life. But Sylvia asked Joseph, she said she wants to call the community how to make a kosher.
Wow.
A kosher, so he said, too late, it's not necessary anymore in this form. So it was really something. But I thought it was very funny when we then met at this reunion. They were all like, how should I say, disappointed. I wasn't so exotic anymore. I came from Israel, but that I wasn't, because kosher had been the whole, a whole thing. It was very funny how they received it. But now comes the point. It was now this. We met only classmates. The husbands, there were two husbands who were there. There was Joseph and Moshe. Moshe was in the room upstairs. We were downstairs, and we were only the girls. And I said, and I had heard already from Gabi when they were here that Eva had come to Canada also with her husband, that she had two daughters with her Swiss husband, non-Jewish Swiss husband, non-Jewish, of course. It was no big deal, I thought, and that they lived in. That she lived in Calgary, I think at that time, yes, that she lived in Calgary, that she got divorced, that she was divorced, and she lived in Calgary, and I don't know if they told me that she got married again, I don't know, this I don't remember, but I said, I must know, I want to call her parents, I looked up in the phone book, the parents still were alive, and I called in the evening. I said, I have to call. And I called, and Eva's father came to the phone, and he said, and I said, I'm Itta Gutglück from school. Yes, sure, I remember. And we are Jews, the second
Wow.
sentence. And we are Jews.
Without you even asking, you never asked?
I didn't say anything. I just wanted to know how they were and how Eva was. Yes, and Eva got divorced, and she married an Orthodox Jew, and she's in Canada, and she's...
she remarried?
Yes, she remarried.
An Orthodox Jew?
Yeah, I don't know how Orthodox, but that's what he said. So it's
wow.
more complicated. So really, and I came down, and I was really like flabbergasted. I don't know, I didn't find myself. Moshe of course understood, but my friends, they did. I think Sylvia understood too, because she was in, they didn't actually understand how, and I told them, listen, I've heard, and they said, and I told them all the years I knew that they're Jewish, and it was really so, okay. Now comes the second guest professorship. Eva's husband, Herb Rosenberg, I have a picture of him, second husband. Professor of zoology, or at Calgary University of Calgary.
This is her second husband.
This is her second husband, but I'll show you more after I talk about what she told me afterwards. Eva. So in the summer in June '82, I get a phone call. No, it couldn't be in June. Yes, it was in June '82. I got a phone call from Eva. We are here. My husband has a guest professorship at the University of Tel Aviv at the Department of Science. And I said, wow, wonderful, and so and so. And I think the first moment I first went to, and they were there with her older daughter Sandra, the one who lives now in Israel, in Ben Shemen. And I went there, and I told her, and she told me, and she really didn't know, and she didn't have any identity somehow. She didn't have no holidays, they didn't celebrate. She was like in a vacuum socially. Not in school. It was wonderful. She had friends. She had personal friends, but she didn't have any, social life, religious or whatever, or the local culture or whatever. She didn't. They probably had friends like this Hannah from the bookstore of her mother, or they had friends, probably Hungarian friends, but no connection to no Jewish community. And when she came, and she didn't have any papers or nothing, she had to convert. And they actually in the war they really converted to Protestantism in order to protect themselves, to be Protestant, and they somehow survived. And then came the communists, and it wasn't important anymore. It was, different conflicts, different life. It was like a tabula rasa. It was nothing, And she said, and then when she came with the idea to marry her first husband Helmut, her father or both her parents said, "You can't do it. We are Jewish." They didn't want him. It's horrible. It was really horrible. Like then suddenly, and they knew it all the time. They never told her.
But they never told her.
They never told her because they didn't want. I know this phenomenon that people also in Germany didn't tell the children that they are Jewish in order not to endanger them. There is this, it's in the genes of these people that they are afraid. So it might be, and the Swiss, there is anti-Semitism, not in my high school, but as in other places. I think I told you once about my brother. When he was in secondary school, they forced him on Shabbat, in the break between lessons, to touch a pencil. They knew. He probably explained he's not allowed to touch. He's not allowed to write. This was okay with the teacher, but the pupils forced him in a break to touch it. So I never had experiences like that, So I was really, so she said, and then I swore when I she somehow, it also didn't work out. They came to Canada after she had finished a degree in English language or languages. I don't exactly know what she made. I just showed you.
Did her parents attend her wedding?
What?
Did her parents attend her wedding when she got married?
I don't know anything. I don't know if we talked about this. I was so shocked about the timing of telling her. They didn't. I don't know if it mattered to them or if they didn't like it. Maybe they saw that they don't match because it's after a few years they got divorced. She had they married in 64. This how I reconstructed with her daughter. And somehow about 66 he had a job. He was a building engineer. In German it's called Bauingenieur, engineer for buildings, and he got some job at the Expo in 67 in Montreal. He built some of the houses there, of the of the different I don't know how you call it, places where the different countries exhibited. So he was involved there, and then his state. I don't know, this I didn't reconstruct, if they were in Montreal together with Gabi and Joseph, but they were in contact. They were all the time in contact, and especially when they wanted, they were very close friends, she and Gabi. Although Gabi left 2 years because she had a conflict with the German teacher. We don't have to go into this, but there were conflicts in all directions between Swiss and German. But in the class there was really great integration. So with Gabi she had, and then she came to Calgary. Her daughter Sandra was born in 68. I don't know if the second daughter is younger or older. I don't know. Monica, I don't know her. I saw her once at the marriage of Sandra here in Israel, but that comes later. But I'm almost through with my story.
Fascinating, Itta.
So she said I'm only. So she had to convert to become Jewish.
For the second marriage.
For the second marriage, yes. And she married, I think maybe he was a widower, I don't know. And they came, so when we got to know him, they came to our house, and Sandra was there, and it was really very, very nice. But I heard all these stories, and it was...
And how was, when you met her again, after all these years, how was the connection?
Very good. We were like friends.
With all your friends at the reunion, it all went well? Yes, it was very, and with Sylvia I'm in contact until today. She knows that I'm giving not today, she doesn't know the date, but I talked to her, I sent her already the links to the other, because I mentioned her to the other interviews, but yeah, and then... Can I just ask, Itta, she couldn't come to the main reunion. When you had that big reunion, she couldn't come to that reunion.
That was in 79. No, she was in Canada. I don't think it was out of, I don't know.
But she knew about the reunion.
I'm sure she knew.
But it was too difficult.
Sure. I think it was too difficult. I don't know what her situation was.
And most of the girls from your class were at that reunion?
Yes, most of them. Yeah.
And seeing them all together, was it like old times?
Was like old times. We also had films we had 2 weeks during our studies, during high school, when we learned one subject during a week. The school had a house in the mountains in Lenzerheide, in one of the most beautiful places in Switzerland, in the mountains. Though in the second year we learned botanics, and we had to define plants from this area. We went with I made my own food. The lady in the kitchen, or who kept the housekeeper there, she said, here I haven't used it yet, so I made myself an egg. I ate somehow. And then you have to know also, my class was there for a month, but I didn't join them, because in Switzerland then a girl before she is 20 has to learn. So they were here from June 82 to I think the summer for a year, or for almost a year. They were in Tel Aviv, and they came to Jerusalem. We were a lot together, and it was really wonderful. And we got to know Sandra also. And then she went back, and I don't know if we wrote to each other. I don't remember but then at a certain time I heard with Gabi and Joseph. Because we met also in Switzerland. When we went to Switzerland, we used to meet them. and we remain in contact. There is a habit with some of my non-Jewish friends who write for New Year at the end of the year. They write probably I think it's American. Also, Joseph and Gabi used to write a letter what has been going on during the year. So we always got, and then we sent pictures, and we were in contact. And he sent me articles. He wrote, and I sent him my articles, and and then around 95, before 95, suddenly I heard that Sandra, her daughter, is getting married with an Israeli, and she's getting married in Jerusalem. I don't know how, and I somehow, Gabi said, and she told Eva, and Eva sent me an invitation. And it was at the wedding was at the museum of the biblical lands, near the Israel Museum. Right, yes, of the Bible lands.
Bible Lands Museum.
Bible Lands Museum. That's it. Wonderful. It was a wonderful summer evening, and there I met Eva again, and I met. Although I don't remember, and this really irritates me because 4 years later she died, and somehow didn't have any remembrance. And I talked to the daughter. Now I took up the contact to Sandra because I wanted to tell her. I didn't want to do it out in the blue. If she was very happy that I'm going to tell, and she doesn't know anything about the life of her mother, not much in Switzerland, but. Her father is still her father. The first husband, Helmut, he was at the wedding. Her wasn't there. Her second husband.
He didn't come to the wedding.
No, he didn't come. Probably was. I don't know. But then I said to people. I met her sister Kati, whom I knew from then, and we talked and we caught up. And then there was a lady sitting near me. Wonderful lady from Oles, a moshav of Hungarians near Netanya, and she said, and she was a cousin of Eva's father, and I laughed and I said, so you are one of the Israeli friends of the family Zador. They told me, I told them the story. I said I was so happy to see these people, and Sandra was so lucky, and her husband. Very, very nice, and everything, and Eva was wonderful. But then I met Eva once. She came then after the daughter was in Israel. I don't know where they stayed in the beginning, maybe in Jerusalem, I don't know. But she was at my house when we lived there already at Bet HaKerem in Jerusalem. She came to visit me twice, and then when she came the second time, she told me that she has cancer. So this was the last time. So between 95 and 99, when she died, I met her twice. And the second time she also didn't look so she died in 99 of cancer.
It's a curious. Did she have any siblings, any brothers or sisters?
A sister who lives in Bern. Yes, her sister. I met her on the wedding of Sandra.
And the sister
Kati.
Did she also find out that she was Jewish?
Of course, I don't remember what we talked about.
Was she older or younger, the sister?
She's younger, and I will call her now. And also, Sandra called her because she didn't know that her grandmother worked in a bookshop. So she said, "I verify." She didn't believe me. I didn't know it. So. This Kati told her that yes, it's true, and at the store I told her, and that later on that she got this job because of a friend who had become before, and she could get this job, and then she had the courage. And for Sandra, it was very about her grandmother that she had the courage to make an effort and get a job in her profession, and she got it later on. So they were very strong people, you could see it in any, and they but also in some way hard people. I don't know how to. Now there is a last part to this story which is really So then I heard, I don't know when, that Eva's mother is in an old age home, a Jewish old age home, Zikna in Zurich, which is not far from where Joseph lived, not on the fancy mountain, on the other one, which is not less. There are also, it's not that there are, it's just different connotations of nobility, you know. I'm ironic, as you see. So, so I was there. It must have been in the year 2000, because I heard that the mother died in 2005. So somewhere probably in the year 2000, somehow quite close to Eva's death, I think, I went with Moshe, we went to Zikna. And I sat and I saw Mrs. Zador as she was. She had straight up in a
wheelchair?
A wheelchair. And she looked as ever, she dignified with her hair. Here it was a little bit grey and she was all. And I introduced myself and I said, I'm Itta, Eva's friend. And then I realized that she was dement and she knew about Itta. And she told me about Itta and she didn't realize that I was Itta. It was so, and her legs were like cramped, you know, she sat there like a mummy, like something very stiff. But she was talking, she heard Itta and Eva, her memories, you know, but she didn't realize it was like such an absurd, sad.
But did she speak nicely about you?
Yes, very nicely.
Not knowing that you were in front of her.
About Eva and her friend and everything. Sure.
And she remembered.
She remembered me, but she didn't realize that I am the person introducing myself as Itta. I was someone who came to tell her about Itta, you know. It was
sad.
It was sad, but somehow like there is some reason to this, you know, incongruence, I would say, of things. I can see some sense in it in some way. I said it was. And I was also, my mother was also dement at the end of, so it was double, you know, to see, but this kind of, my mother didn't talk anymore in the end, also it was like, it's a different story, but still it was, you know, and Sandra told me that her grandmother, and they used to visit, she and her husband used to visit the grandparents. The grandfather died in 1989 and the grandmother in 2005, that she told me. And she said when she married and was in Israel, they were afraid. Why don't you go away from Canada? It's much more safe. Why do you go to Israel with all the wars and all that? Yeah, that's
amazing.
That's the story of Eva Zador Rosenberg. And then after she died, her husband made a scholarship, Eva Rosenberg Memorial Scholarship. I read you the text. Yes. Eva Rosenberg was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1942. She and her parents lived through the Holocaust and the subsequent regime, and finally escaped to Switzerland and freedom in 1956. Eva earned her bachelor's and master's degree in Zurich. Subsequently completed a second master's degree at the University of Calgary, focusing on the second language acquisition, Hungarian, German, French, Swiss German and Hebrew. Her early life and education in Europe formed a solid foundation to become a professor of languages at Mount Royal. Eva taught French and German at Mount Royal for 20 years, She took great pride in her position and always maintained it was an ideal workplace. She appreciated her colleagues, the students, and friendly environment. So that's in memory of Eva. And I had another.
And they made a scholarship.
Yes, and I have two about her husband being Orthodox. I think that first of all, I looked it up in the internet, and I found an article in the Jewish Free Press, probably the Jewish newspaper or periodic of weekly or something of Calgary, and it's by Daniel Shimonov's long journey to Canada. And Dani Shimonov is one of the Bukharian Jews, several Bukharian Jews in Calgary, and he had an uncle there, and he tells the story how he came from Tashkent there, and he said, and at the time when he came, it was around this time too that Dani met Rabbi Menachem Matuzov and was first introduced to Chabad Lubavitch. I think at a certain time Chabad took over in the community. I don't know, because from what I heard when I met Herb, it sounded like at most a conservative community. Also, he didn't go with a kippah, and they probably kept kosher. I don't know. I didn't ask. It's not. But what this man writes is. But I was invited to the Matuzov home for Shabbos. Another family that was important for her was her and his late wife Eva Rosenberg, who were connected to Dani by Jewish Family Service Calgary. So they were active in the community. Wow. I also saw that until now he is in the Cheva Kadisha, really? in the burial committee, and doing Tahara. And he also was, how do you call it, Kupai, or he is on the finances he is responsible, but he's also, I think he was active is still active in the Cheva Kadisha. And Daniel Shimonov writes, they were incredibly kind to us. They did so many things to help us, to show us the ropes. Our first Pesach in Calgary was with Herb and Eva. I asked Herb once how such a busy man like him could take so much time to help us, and I remember Herb saying, Dani, one day you'll do it for someone else.
Gee. That's amazing.
And I found, I wanted to see because there is no article in Wikipedia, I don't have any dates about her, but I found a Sabbath Bulletin Congregation House of Jacob Mikveh Israel, Parashat Lech Lecha, October 30-31, 2020, 13 Cheshvan 5781, Friday Mincha, and there is another, he is named here. Thank you to our 20 life and legacy donors to date who have signed the letters of intent, an organization. We have just learned that year 2 has been extended to the end of March 2021, which gives us the opportunity to better reach our goals. So all kinds of organization of donations. For more information, please contact David Silver, Judy Shriar, Herb Rosenberg, Larry Katz, or the that's the House of Jacob Mikveh Israel. That's some organization there, and he is still in October. He was still active. So that's the last news I could find in internet, and connecting him and her to Jewish life in Calgary.
And Itta, with the daughter, with Sylvia, are you still in touch with her daughter? Yeah.
I took up the connection now. I found her out also in the internet. I found that they live in Ben Shemen, and she is also translating and teaching language, English, and translating, I think, from Hebrew into English. And her husband is, I don't remember what he does, but they have 2 sons. Her oldest son is in the army, the other one is still in school. And we couldn't meet now, it was in COVID times, but she said she has an album of the wedding. So I don't know, maybe I'll ask her if she wants, I thought of, I'll ask her if she's interested, if you would like to talk to her.
I would love to. And with Eva's second marriage, are you in touch with any of the children from the second marriage?
Eva's second marriage, she didn't have children.
Oh, she never had children from the second marriage?
I don't even know if he was married before and had children. I never, I didn't ask about him.
It was
too private, and also he was very nice, very friendly person, and very open, and he must have been wonderful.
So did she only have one child?
2 children.
2 children, and the other.
She has a daughter, Monica, who is in the United States.
Oh, Monica, and are you in touch with Monica?
No, I don't. I think Sandra will now be in touch. They are in touch. I don't remember even if I think Sandra is the older one, but I'm not sure, because when they came, Monica didn't come with them when Herb and. So she probably stayed with her, and maybe she was the younger one and went to school. And Sandra could, I don't know. I didn't go into the family history. It was my interest was really Eva, and of course Sandra and the wedding and all this. But it's all connected for me.
And was Monica at the wedding?
She was at the wedding, and I think I met her, but I don't have any remembrance. It's too much, too many new people, and Eva and her sister, whom I remembered and who remembered me. So I'm going to call her after. I thought to call her before, but then I said, and of course Sandra is sending them the link to the interview.
I just want to thank you. So it's always is such an honor and a privilege to listen to you, but this in particular is something exceptionally special. And what you've done for your friend, it's such a beautiful picture. This is this is a picture of your friend of Eva.
Yes.
And you really have, may her memory, you've actually perpetuated her memory.
Yeah.
And may her memory be for an eternal blessing.
Yeah.
And I think what you've done here for her descendants, they can be so proud of her, such an amazing woman, that she was so determined, and look what she achieved, and your friendship that you continued all these years. It's something.
Yeah, she was very important.
It's very, very special what you've done, Itta.
Yeah.
And she was very blessed to have you as a friend.
And we used to have a lot of fun. I forgot to tell you, one of the laughing things was the period of the crisis in the life of the Shah of Persia, who divorced, what's her name, Soraya, and married Faradiba.
Yeah.
And there were all these newspapers, and they were called the Farad, and we would look at the pictures and we would make fun of it, and we had so much.
You can see from what she wrote, there was a lot of laughter. She loved laughter.
There was a lot of laughter, a lot of sense of humor, and really, and I didn't know, it was horrible for me, and I didn't know what a hard life she had socially. She went with friends. I know with Gabi they went to meet men, to meet people, to meet, she had her social life with friends from school, which I didn't take part of as a religious girl. And so they were different. She was such a lively person, and she had her circles, but she had some kind of a vacuum, of belonging somewhere,
Well, Itta, thank you so very much. And it's been a tremendous honor and a privilege. A real honor and a privilege to hear the story, and I know that your friend Eva from above is really, she's smiling because you've done a beautiful thing by remembering her, and may her memory be for eternal blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity and for the interest and for the dialogue with you, which is opens up people to talk, you know.
It's very kind of you, Itta.